We are live again from Hollywood, Florida, for this year's Patriot Awards, and there is another amazing crowd here tonight. Give yourselves a hand. And we hope everyone is having a lot of fun. We have a great show coming your way, starting with some big news about Nancy Pelosi. The top Democrat calling it quits after Republicans took away her gavel by winning back the House.
We must move boldly into the future. I will not seek re-election to Democratic leadership in the next Congress. For me, the hour's come for a new generation to lead the Democratic caucus that I so deeply respect.
Pelosi's nearly 20-year grip on the Democratic Party has finally come to an end. She will stay as a member of Congress for the next 2 years. No word what's beyond that. Pelosi is stepping aside because there is a new sheriff in town. Republicans winning that magical number of 218 House seats, with the possibility of that majority growing with a few more races still too close to call. Kevin McCarthy, who is on track to be the next speaker, sounds like he's ready to hold President Biden accountable.
It's one-size gavel with the ability to subpoena and hold this government accountable, secure this border, fight to make us energy independent, give parents a say in their kids' education, and actually look what the DOJ is doing, what the DHS is doing, and others. And that's exactly what we're going to do on day one in this House.
Judge Jeanine, Nancy Pelosi making that decision. We kind of anticipated it, but kind of interesting. She's not leaving Congress. She's just going to step down from the speakership and then, I don't know, I guess be helping her constituents for the next 2 years.
Well, you know, it was interesting that she talked about, you know, the next generation, the new generation. But I can't imagine Nancy Pelosi actually staying in Congress and not having, in the House, not having the leadership role. I mean, that I don't have any information to support that. But, you know, we take her at her word. She'll stay there. She could keep working, but not a leadership position. But I think what's going to get to her is when the Republicans start the investigations that they promised during the midterms, and that's going to make her crazy because she won't have the power that she had as Speaker of the House. And I think that when they start those investigations, they should recognize that what's really important right now is the things that American people are concerned about, and that is the country going in the wrong direction, the cost of food prices and gas prices. But I think there's also another piece that has to be looked into, and that is the issue of Hunter Biden, all of the money that he's collected from around the world, and what Joe Biden's role may have been in that situation. And I think that's going to put her over the edge. But we'll see.
A couple of members of Congress held a press conference earlier, and they talked about some of the investigations. Let's hear a little bit of that.
This is an investigation of Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and why he lied to the American people about his knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes. Documents show that he was a partner with access to an office. To be clear, Joe Biden is the big dog.
We went from it wasn't his laptop and it was Russian disinformation to, oh, whatever was in there didn't affect the president's business dealings, even though he was involved, even though the laptop was real, even though it wasn't disinformation. That's how far we've come.
All right, Jesse, I'm sure you'll be following all of that on prime time, but as Judge Jeanine said, there were promises made by House Republicans when they were running for the Congress that if they got the majority, they would have these hearings. So here we go.
Yeah, we learned a lot in the last 24 hours. One of those is Harold Ford Jr. can party. Oh, my God.
Yes.
How many fingers am I holding up, Harold? You know, if you're going to run for president, you got to get that out of your system. So
you got home after I did.
I did. So they have witness testimony, they have bank records, and they have the laptop. And it's probably going to show that Joe Biden committed conspiracy, wire fraud. There was involvement in international sex trafficking through Hunter Biden, and possible abuse of power and possible impeachable offenses, because they're saying right now he's a threat to national security. He's possibly compromised by America's enemies because he was looking to sell out American gas, drilling rights, cobalt to the Chinese. You know, Hunter was getting bribed by diamonds. They were commingling bank accounts. They had shell companies set up everywhere. 50 other countries were involved in this. So at the end of the day, they're going to have to bring in people to testify. And you can't keep a lid on this for that much longer because there's suspicious wire activity coming in from Beijing, coming in from Moscow, very suspicious that they're trying to block access to. So when they throw these subpoenas down, it's going to look like a cover-up. And I'm really proud of the Republicans for throwing down the gauntlet that hard. Now, I don't care if it's a red wave, red trickle. Nancy Pelosi is gone, and very happy about that. And she leaves a really just vicious legacy from corruption to Obamacare to all kinds of shenanigans and reckless spending. And the Republicans are going to put a brake on the reckless spending, and they're going to get out there in front. And the first thing I want to see Fauci hauled in because I want to watch him squirm. I want to see him disclose these royalties he's taking from Big Pharma. And then I also want to see this little mini Madoff mega donor come up and testify about how he bought the Senate. So there's a lot of things we want to get to, also border security, energy security, and again, just slam the brakes on Joe Biden's agenda.
Border security, Greg, was something that, it does affect everyone. It's not just the border states.
Well, I mean, I think at a minimum, we kind of want to return to normalcy. Just have a normal border. Maybe stop people from stealing so much. That would be kind of nice. Maybe men who think they're women shouldn't be in women's sports. These are just small things that we want. I'm going to miss Nancy Pelosi and her unique eyebrows, which seem plucked from a dying praying mantis. But I don't think you're going to see her go away. I think you're going to see her go from the gavel to the Gavin. Ooh. Right? Aren't they related?
Yeah.
They should be related. But also, we're coming up on Christmas. It's time for a female Scrooge, right? We don't have a female Scrooge. She would be perfect. I am all for the Hunter stuff. We've been talking about it forever, but I want to talk about something else and bring back the memories of the early five. When there's gridlock and there's budgets, there's talks of budgets, it's some of the most boring stuff in the world, but the most boring things in the world are often the most important. So we're going to talk about government shutdowns. Now, do you remember how every conversation about a government shutdown was the end of the world? Do you remember that if one national park closed, we were all going to die? And now the people that are saying that were behind the biggest shutdown of all time, COVID, and it didn't bother them at all. So I want you to remember that when the fight comes over funding. Funding is boring, but the fight will come, and when we start cutting funding, they're going to say the country will die, Granny will die, everything will die. But you got to remember, they proved us wrong just a few years ago, a few months ago, when they shut down the country. They were totally fine with that. We're still here. So I think that's going to be baloney. But I would definitely like to see all the things that the Democrats took from us, barring Harold, and it's good to see her up. I smoothed it over with the Florida police. I said that you thought it was a nude beach.
Wow, I mean, I guess the judge and I really missed out.
But the thing is, the Democrats took a lot from us. Yeah. They took law and order. They took safety and security. They took actual things. They took our money.
Yep.
So it's like at the most basic level, what you want from a Republican-held Congress is just to return some of the stuff that was already taken away. That's it. Gridlock. Gridlock is boring, but it's important.
Yeah, gridlock can be good.
Yes.
So, Harold, would you like to defend yourself and also talk about Nancy Pelosi?
I have no idea what these guys are talking about. They're my pals, and
it's natural that you wouldn't remember it.
So Nancy Pelosi, I understand that there's a desire, but everyone has every right to want Republicans in charge. But when Derek Jeter retired from baseball, the Red Sox congratulated him and clapped for him. That was his biggest rival. She was a formidable foe for Republicans. She was even a formidable foe for some Democrats at times. I ran against her to be the minority leader of the Congress back in 2002. She's proven to be an extraordinary leader, whether you agree with her or not. She's the only speaker who won the speakership, lost it, won it again, and lost it in just 16 years. So I congratulate her. She's a bridge to where Democrats were, are, and probably are going. And I congratulate her for opening the doors for a new generation of leadership to be ushered into Congress. Two, in all the polling data that I saw about why people should go and vote for Republicans over Democrats this last election, I don't recall in any of the top 10 being an investigation of Hunter Biden, an investigation of Dr. Fauci or investigation of some of the things that they're talking about. But they have every right to do that. I do hope we have an equal emphasis, if not more of an emphasis, on legislating than we do investigating. I don't mind investigating.
You don't get to say that after the Russia hoax, Harold. That was 2 years of the Russia hoax. No one voted for that investigation.
But at some point, the payback on top of payback on top of payback on top of payback has to stop. This is not third grade.
So you say you punch me in the mouth and, oh, let's not fight anymore.
Yeah, why are the Republicans want to have to buckle?
But let me finish my point. Because the people expect people in politics to legislate and lead. If they want to have a hearing on the best police practices around the country so we can employ it in Chicago, in New York, in Los Angeles, if they want to have a hearing on education rights and how parents are involved, the model way for parents to be involved around the country, so we can do it in Memphis, in Birmingham, in Miami, in Dallas. If you want to have a hearing on border security, how we should build a wall, put more judges down there, judge so we can figure out who deserves asylum, who doesn't, and for that matter, bringing in new workers that can help our country. Those are the hearings I want them to have. If they want to investigate Hunter and Joe Biden and Dr. Fauci.
We want to have a hearing on whether or not President Biden sold the country out to the Chinese.
And you know what? We ask him. But my only point is this. If that's where the focus is over the next 2 years, there'll be a Democratic speaker.
We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
By the way, you know...
And spit.
You know who was colluding with the Russians last night? Harold. He had like seven white Russians. 7 white Russians.
My mom, all of this is false. This is a lie on the part of my friends here.
We still want you to run for president.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't you worry. All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.